It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin' Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my compatriot Tom. Tom, how are you today?
Doing good. Getting back into the UFC swing of things. It's been fast and furious. We've had cards, some good, some not so good, some good fights, some bad fights, some okay fights. Not a ton of stuff to look forward to, but Henry Cejudo back in action this weekend. What are you thinking about it? How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I think it's interesting to see Henry Cejudo fighting Song Yadong in the main event this week, especially after that video just came out of Mario Bautista confronting Henry Cejudo at like some kind of signing event that the UFC had. And he was like Cejudo just basically shit on him. And it's a bad day when Henry Cejudo verbally 10-8s you. He was like, what have you done besides hold Jose Aldo against the cage for 15 minutes? What have you done? He's like, I'm the featherweight champ, I'm the bantamweight champ, an Olympian champ, and an Olympic champ. And who are you? He's like, all you're known for is just wrestling Jose Aldo for 15 minutes against the cage. And so I'm kind of actually excited to see Henry Cejudo back in there. It's the first time that I haven't cringed when I heard him speak, and maybe that's more of that to come. Maybe there's going to be a fun Henry Cejudo moment after this fight, or maybe a fun Song Yadong fight. We'll see how it turns out and give our picks later. Before we do that, just want to ask everybody, please like, comment, and subscribe. Comment. Definitely jump in the chat. We had some friends in here a couple of weeks ago jumping in with us, and we were having some fun conversation with them. And if you subscribe, it really helps us out big time. You might think you're subscribed already, but make sure you check that red box. And if it comes up as red, then you have not subscribed. Please, we'd appreciate it. All right, so we got UFC Fight Night, Cejudo versus Song Yadong. You want to jump into our prelim notables as usual?
Let's do it. As soon as I hit the button, as soon as I find the button. Here we go.
All right, starting down at the very first fight, we got Modestas Bukauskas against Rafael Sequeira, and I'm going with Modestas Bukauskas. Guy was awesome. He was the Cage Warriors champ before he made his way to the UFC, and then Khalil Roundtree, as much as I like him, he hit him with that dirty oblique kick and broke Modestas's knee. Then Modestas left the UFC, came back, and since then, he's been doing pretty well. His only loss out of his last 5 is to Vitor Petrino, who we all know who Vitor is at this point, one of the best contender or up-and-coming prospects in this light heavyweight division. And then he's fighting Rafael Sequeira, who has 1 fight in the UFC and 1 loss in the UFC, and that is to another man coming up later on this card, Ibo Aslan. And that was under a minute. That was, I believe, we checked it out, 50 seconds that fight was ended in? Now, Sequeira, before he got to the UFC, putting a lot of guys out, looking really good. And then you face that UFC level competition who Ibo Aslan is still relatively new himself, but Modestas Bukauskas has been around. This is now his second tenure in the UFC, second trip around. He's got the experience. He's been the champ of another organization and not as good, but a feeder organization for the UFC. And he was a guy that a lot of people talked very highly about before he had that devastating injury that almost took him out of the sport. I think that Modestas Bukauskas is a minus 325 favorite for a reason. I'm still going to take him in this fight. I still like the guy a lot, and I think that there's a good chance he gets done by TKO. Sequeira, in that last fight against Aslan, he shows when he gets faced with a little bit of adversity, he turtles up against the cage and just starts eating shots. And Modestas, when he smells blood, he jumps in there for the kill. So I'm going with Modestas Bukauskas. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think a lot of the reasons that you cited are the reasons that I'm going to be going with Modestas Bukauskas to get this one done. But I'm going to give Rafael Sequeira, the Lion, a little bit more credit here. I'm going to say that last fight, even though he hasn't had a great level of competition up until this point, and that first UFC fight left a lot to be desired. I think, going to give him a little bit of credit, even at 34 or 35 years old, that, maybe if he gets hit, he's going to have a little bit of more of a wherewithal of how to, move to the side, get away from there. And maybe this one goes to the decision. I'm looking at Modestas Bukauskas. He's got the knockout outside of the UFC, decision with Tyson Pedro, decision with Zach Pauga, knocked out by Vitor Petrino, and submission by Marcin Prachnio. I haven't personally seen, ground and pound or jiu-jitsu abilities from Rafael Sequeira to be able to say one way or the other. But I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt that he's going to go the distance here. So I'm going to pick Modestas Bukauskas by decision on this fight.
Nice. Well, at least we both agree with the guy. And then, you go with whichever method you like. They do have double chance bets as well. Maybe he even gets a sub here. So next up, we got Nick Klein versus Mansour Abdul Malik. And I am going with Mansour Abdul Malik against Nick Klein. That's the pick here. He is a minus 560 favorite as of the time that we're recording this video. That's because Nick Klein has taken this fight on short notice. I forget who Mansour was supposed to fight first. It was someone with a little bit more UFC experience. I'll find that for you now on the canceled bouts at the bottom of this Tapology page. Let's see. Mansour. Oh, he was supposed to fight Antonio Trocoli, who, he's been around. We've seen him on a bunch of cards at this point. Nick Klein is a guy with one Contender Series fight. He did win that one by submission, and he looked pretty good doing it. But Mansour Abdul Malik is 7-0. Both of these guys have 7 fights professionally. Nick Klein being 6-1. But he hasn't really fought anybody notable. The promotions he was in before the UFC are not the best. And he's taken this fight on short notice because of Antonio Trocoli stepping out. So with all that being said, I think Mansour Abdul Malik is going to go in there and use those big hands and really just he's going to light Nick Klein up early and show him why he's been in the UFC and Nick Klein hasn't. So I'm going with Mansour Abdul Malik. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you there, you see the odds went from minus 700 to now minus 920 to get this one done. We are going to talk about in the next fight a favorite who was a 900, was a minus 900 favorite and then actually lost that fight in Javid Basharat. But Mansour Abdul Malik minus 920, definitely looking like he's going to be the guy to be able to get this one done. 6-1 for Nick Blue Collar Klein. The submission off of the Contender Series is what got him into the UFC, and then the level of competition that we're fighting outside of the UFC. Not a ton there to make me think that, the guy who was able to knock out Dusko Todorovic just 3 months ago is going to be, all that phased, all that challenge. Like you said, taking it on short notice, I think the UFC has taken their opportunity to get a little bit more face time for Mansour Abdul Malik. I expect him to get this one done by knockout. Next fight on the card, Keith. What are you thinking of Ricky Simone taking on Javid Basharat? Remember, Basharat in this loss here to Alman Zahabi, he was a minus 900 favorite. Ended up getting the loss there by unanimous decision. What do you think, Ricky Simone, Javid Basharat?
Call me crazy. I'm going to go with plus 230 dog Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone's fought some great competition in the past. I think this is a pretty solid pick, to be honest, because Ricky Simone has got, out of his last 5, he is 2-3. But those 3 losses are to Vinicius Oliveira, who's making a name for himself right now, Mario Bautista, that same guy that got called out by, or tried to call out Henry Cejudo on the airport, and then Song Yadong, who is headlining this card against Henry Cejudo. Wins against Jack Shore, Rafael Assunção. And then, you go back further than his last 5, and he shared the octagon with some really great competition. He's lost to some great competition and looked great doing it. 20-6 record, and 3 of those losses came in his last 3 fights. I don't think that Ricky Simone has really regressed so much as he's fought excellent competition, and Javid Basharat has not. And being that his last fight, that huge upset where he was a minus 900 favorite, I believe we read that it was in the top 50 upsets in MMA of all time, which sounds about right. Being that loss went down how it did, utter domination. Well, not utter domination, but, losing a unanimous decision to a guy that you're projected to beat by everybody. Only 5% of the Tapology votes came in against him. I think Ricky Simone's going to turn around here against Javid Basharat. He is legit. We have seen him fight, excellent in the past and look really good. And, he's got it in all areas. But I think Ricky Simone is going to bounce back this fight. I think this is his bounce back fight. He's another guy that's great in all areas, great hands, great grappling. Even that Song Yadong fight, I believe that was a 5-round fight, main event. And he got TKO'd, but it was pretty late in the fight. Looked good up until that moment. Mario Bautista, this is great competition, and Javid Basharat hasn't faced that level of competition yet. So at plus 230, give me Ricky Simone. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't know why. I mean, Javid Basharat and Ricky Simone definitely have different body types. You can see Javid Basharat 3 inches taller, and Ricky Simone is every bit of a stocky 5'6", but only a 1 inch reach advantage for Ricky Simone coming back. I think even though he isn't the best boxer, he definitely can get it done, and he's had a pretty solid chin, unless you have Song Yadong coming and punching at you. And I think ultimately Song Yadong is known for having a really strong punch. So and Ricky Simone took a lot of punches there. Again, not the best boxer in the world, certainly not the level of Song Yadong, who's going to be in our main event here and in our main event for a reason. Javid Basharat, I just think he left a little bit a little bit to be desired against Alman Zahabi there, and I think Ricky Simone against those last three opponents, all really good opponents, all looked fairly solid. I like him to get the upset. I don't have much more to go on more than just a feeling here where I think his strong grappling, the fact he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but I think he's better than that. And I think he's going to show that. Javid Basharat probably maybe still reeling from the largest upset ever. I mean, but you could also say that Javid Basharat maybe allowed him to get recentered. He lost that undefeated moniker, and now he can come back with a little bit less pressure and really show off against Ricky Simone. The people at Tapology would say he would do that. 78% are on Basharat. But hey, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be right there with you, taking the underdog at plus 230. Give me Ricky Simone. I've always kind of liked him. And, we'll see what happens here. But I'm going to pull him for Ricky Simone.
Yeah, me too. I want him to bounce back. Next up, speaking of a guy who could bounce back, is Nursultan Ruziboyev versus Eric McConico. And Eric McConico, another guy making his UFC debut here Saturday. He's actually fought decent competition in the past. He's fought in the LFA, and then he fought Maki Pitolo in Tough and Uff. That seems to be the promotion where he spent his most recent tenure. But I'm still going to go with Nursultan Ruziboyev here. Nursultan has knocked out some great guys in the UFC. He did lose his last one to Joaquin Buckley. That's a bounce back I was talking about. But a knockout over Cedric Dumas, Bruno Ferreira, another hard guy to knock out. And then before that, fought in the WEF. He's got almost, a little over 40 professional fights. So almost 50, honestly. And that's impressive, being that he's 31 years old. So I'm going to go with Nursultan Ruziboyev here. It's just a big experience gap between the two of them. Over 40 professional fights against 13. 13. I could do math. So, no, wait. 9 plus 2 is 11 plus 12. Jesus Christ, I got to go back to school. I'm going to go with Nursultan Ruziboyev here. That's a big gap. And I think that Nursultan, his striking is crisp, on point when he needs it to be. It didn't look great against Joaquin Buckley, but Joaquin, his trajectory, and he didn't get finished by Joaquin either, which happens to a lot of guys. So, I'm going to go with Ruziboyev here to get the win, probably by TKO over Eric McConico. What do you think?
Yeah, and I, hate to be boring and just keep agreeing with you, but I don't think we've deviated so far other than the method of victory at one of the earlier fights. I'm going to be taking Nursultan Ruziboyev to get the victory over Eric McConico. You're looking at his first fight in the UFC, 28-20. Jerome Hatch was, his last submission win 6, almost 7 months ago. Coming into this fight, Nursultan Ruziboyev fought 9 months ago against Joaquin Buckley, like you said, was able to fend off getting knocked out, which a lot of guys can't necessarily say. I think he's fought better competition. He's faster. We're seeing he's a 76-inch reach at 6'5", so he's going to have that long leg reach and a little bit of just a regular reach. But Nursultan Ruziboyev, I expect him to go out there, get this one done. I think, I would probably, after looking at what Tapology has to say, going to go ahead and get that knockout against about a 35-year-old, essentially UFC rookie. I like that matchup. Minus 300. If we look over on best fight odds, Nursultan Ruziboyev, I wonder if we can pull him up by knockout here. Well, either I don't know how to use the website or it's not working for me right now. But either way, Nursultan Ruziboyev by knockout is going to be my pick.
Good. We both agree there. Next up, we got Jan Kudalaba versus Ibo Aslan. And in the past, I used to like Jan Kudalaba. The whole thing, painting himself green, coming out as the Hulk. That was fun. That is his nickname. That's his moniker, the Hulk. He doesn't really live up to it, outside of the fact that he gets angry, and when he gets angry, he gets really stupid, but he's not invincible like the Hulk. He just does stupid shit. So I'm gonna go with Ebo Aslan by Kudalaba doing something stupid, probably getting hit once. Ebo is strong, he's lean. I mean, look at the guy; he's an athlete. We saw that knockout earlier against Rafael Sequeira. If you haven't seen it, look it up. He's got crazy hands. And I think when Jan gets touched up a couple times, he starts to drop his hands. He wants to scrap. And that doesn't always work out well for him. You know, you look at like those old fights against Ryan Spann and guys like that that have serious power. You drop your hands against a guy like that because you're angry and you want to throw with him. That guy's going to throw with you and he's going to land. And that strike that lands is probably going to put Jan Kudalaba's lights out. So I'm going to go with Ebo Aslan, just purely catching Jan Kudalaba doing some stupid shit early in the fight and probably putting his lights out. So, yeah, give me Ebo Aslan. What do you think?
I'm gonna agree with you for the fourth or fifth time in a row here. I'm going with Ebo Aslan. You talked about that last knockout of Rafael Guerra 50 seconds into the fight. Sticks with you when he seeks blood in the water, went and threw punches. I think if he potentially does something like that against Jan Kutalaba, you could see Jan Kutalaba, fire back. We see him get angry and throw crazy punches. And yes, he is 2-3 over his last 5. He's got that split decision win over Ivan Urslan, which, I think, some people would argue that he wasn't deserving of that. At least a couple of the judges would. Tanner Boser knockout. And then you look the losses. Felipe Lins, Kennedy Nzechukwu, Johnny Walker, some decent names, guys who are also streaky. So this guy is super streaky. We haven't yet seen Ebo Aslan appear to be that streaky. He's on a good streak himself here over some guys with some pretty solid records. Anton Turkalaj. I always stumble on his last name. Rafael Guerra, it looked really good there. He's strong. He's fast. Minus 135. Plenty of the people at Tapology are also in agreement there. If you got a guy who's minus 135, but 85% of the picks on Tapology, I think that's a pretty good bet there. So give me minus 135, Ebo Aslan. I think Vegas has to keep this line at, this kind of mid, 115, because you got to account for the Jan Kutalaba crazy factor, you know what I mean? Which is always potential. But I think the safer bet's on Ebo Aslan, minus 135. I think his odds of winning are greater than minus 135.
Yeah, I agree. What do you have anything for this prelim main event, this prelim featured fight, Andre Fili versus Melky Costa?
No, this is an interesting one. You look at it, minus 110 for both guys. Andre Fili on the outskirts of his prime. You got Meliziguel Costa coming into his prime at 28 years old. Streaky, 3-2 for both of these guys. 21-7 Melk Kaufti, just a whole bunch of Brazilian words that I don't know. But Shelian Nerdebienke, that win by submission stands in my mind. The loss to Steve Garcia. Remember, he's 28 years old. A year and 2 months ago, had turned 27. Austin Lingo decision. Thiago Moises 2 years ago, rear naked choke there. Junior Mello and that's your UFC debuting at 26, 25 years old. It's a lot to live up to. We've seen Andre Fili do a lot in this sport. He's got the win over Bill Algeo by split decision, lost to Nathaniel Wood by decision, win by knockout, Lucas Almeida, lost to Dan Ige by knockout, and a split decision win against Cub Swanson, which was a back and forth battle. We know Cub Swanson brings it each and every time. This is one I'm going to have to just err on the side of youth ever so slightly. You look at what Tapology has to say. They're actually going with Andre Fili to get this one done. Does make me rethink my opinion here a little bit, but at minus 110, I'm more looking forward to this just being a really good fight more than me having a clear view onto what's going to happen here and what I expect is, at least enough to be able to make a pick here. I would err on the side of youth a little bit, but after looking at what Tapology has to say, you kind of rethink that maybe just a touch and, think like, yes, he is young. He is prone to making mistakes. You do have the wily vet in Andre Fili, who's, still quick in his own right, still dangerous on the feet, has been through a lot. We've seen him fight through a lot of things going on personally. So that's clearly a testament to his toughness. Tapology has a wide range of difference on their featherweight ranking worldwide. Not that plays too much into opinion here, but yeah, a little bit of reach advantage, a little bit of an experience advantage. Actually, a moderate experience advantage for Andre Fili. He has seemed to lose to guys who've been around the block as well. When it comes to guys who are a little bit younger and maybe prone to making mistakes, give me Andre Philly, I guess. But it's a toss up. It's a toss up. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's my pick too, and not to be boring, like you said, but I'm also going to go with Andre Feely. Although, I mean, I'm going to leave this one out of my rundown picks just because it could go either way, and I don't want it to hurt my record too much. And I do have a feeling that this guy Costa, he's got a solid submission game. I don't see him like climbing up Andre Feely's back or anything, but I do see there being a moment on the ground where like Andre Feely, he's got great jujitsu defense, great submission defense, but he has been caught a few times on the ground, and I could see that happening this time around. But if it stays on the feet, I think Andre Feely is just going to outbox him. He's got really solid hands. He outboxed Cub Swanson, even though Cub Swanson is like 40 years old. The guy can still box. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Andre Feely here, but I'm going to abstain when it comes to the rundown. But that wraps up our prelim notables. I guess every fight was notable this time around. The ones I'm really going to keep an eye out for, though, are Yibo Aslan, this fight, and the Mansour Abdul Malik fight. Those are the ones I'm really going to watch out for because I think those will be the most fun. But you want to start our main event picks? All right. What do we got first? Why don't you kick us off here, Tom?
Alonzo Menafield taking on Julius Walker. And, I was just going back through and I was looking at Julius Walker, who's obviously 25 years old. So he's going to be a young prospect here in the UFC, maybe prospect used lightly. Of his last 6, we can see 5, 3-5, 0-3, 6-1, 7-5, 20-11. So the wins aren't over, stellar competition. Otherwise, you look at Alonzo Menafield, 37 years old, on the opposite side of his prime here, but definitely still dangerous. He does have 2 losses to Asmat Mirzakhanov, who was 13-0 at the time by knockout, and Carlos Oberg by knockout. I'm not necessarily afraid of a knockout coming back from Julius Walker. I think I expect him to be young, inexperienced, throw a little bit wild, maybe be a little bit timid. One of those two things. I think Alonzo Menafield is measured at this point. Yes, his nickname is Atomic, and he is looking to land that big shot. He did do it enough times against Dustin Jacoby, and who is a kickboxer in his own right. So I think that is a testament to Alonzo Menafield's stand-up. And, he's got a very strong base. I don't think he's going to find himself on the ground too much. People at Tapology agree 66% to 34 are going Menafield by knockout. So I'm giving a slight, opportunity to Walker to get this one done by knockout, but not me. I like Alonzo Menafield to get this one done. Potentially by knockout. 6-0 prospect. It depends on maybe his demeanor coming into this fight here, but either way, I'm going with Alonzo Menafield to get this one done.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think Alonzo Menafield, he's been around the block. He knows what he has to do. He's fought some good competition. Last 2 losses are really good losses. I mean, losing to Carlos Oberg. He's a guy who is silently creeping his way up the light heavyweight rankings right now. So, and he didn't look like, he got knocked out, but for a guy fighting Carlos Oberg, he didn't look horrible. That's a hard guy to fight. He looks like an action figure. He looks like a superhero. So, I'm going to go with Alonzo Menafield here. What do we got next? All right, we got Gene Silva versus Melsik Bagdasarian. And I am going to go with Gene Silva. I'm going to agree with 97% of the Tapology voters that like Gene Silva. He's coming out of the Fighting Nerds. He's looked awesome in the UFC so far. He's beaten just about everybody's come across in the UFC by knockout, and they're no slouches, right? Weston Wilson, okay, but then Charles Jourdain, TKO, and Drew Dober, TKO. That was for a cut that was stopped, I believe, going into the 3rd round. That was a tough fight. He made Drew Dober, who's normally a guy that makes other people crumble, he made Drew Dober crumble a couple times. And I love Drew Dober as well. So that one made me sad. But Gene Silva is a guy who he's really becoming a fan favorite. He's got crazy knockout power, 3 fights in the UFC, and he's got 97% of the votes, minus 575 favorite. I think it's pretty clear that when he wins, it's got to be by TKO. He's a guy that walks his opponent down to the fence and then throws bombs. And as he closes that distance, he's just bombing and bombing and bombing. It looks like, I almost made a bad joke that people wouldn't have liked. They would have gotten offended. Since I didn't make that joke, make sure you subscribe. Okay.
Growth.
If you would have been offended by it, keep in mind that I didn't want to offend you. You already know what joke I was going to make. I was making a joke about bombing. But yeah, it looks like I don't know. I mean, I think Gene Silva's going to knock him out. He's crazy. He's wild, and yet he's also measured and calculated and super, super strong. A lot of power in those hands, and only 28 years old, even though he looks 47. So I'm going with Gene Silva to get the knockout over. I'm going to have fun saying this again. Melsik Bagdasaryan. What do you got?
Well done. Melsik Bagdasaryan, I think, is going to pick up the L here for a lot of the reasons you stated, but I didn't need to hear anything else after you said Fighting Nerds. I don't know if they won, Gym of the Year in 2024, but goddamn, they are deserving of it if they didn't. I can't think of another gym that has more top prospects, more of a stamp of approval of somebody is most certainly going to win a fight other than being from the Fighting Nerds. And I think that is definitely the case here. Minus 575, 97% on Tapology, almost all of it by knockout. I think Gene Silva by knockout, maybe first round, is enough for me to go ahead and lock that one in. Not giving any financial advice, but he's 28 years old, entering his prime. The only thing here is this is a featherweight 145 fight, so he is going to be cutting 10 more pounds than he had to against Drew Dober and Charles Jourdain. Well, Charles Jourdain is a 145er, so back to 145, able to get the knockout of Drew Dober, who's a big 55er, and to drop back down to 45. Yeah, I expect Silva to go ahead and get this one done, and yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Hey, I like it. This one's a tough one. We got Rob Font versus Gene Matsumoto, and it is difficult, right? Because you have Rob Font, who's been around for quite some time. Gene Matsumoto has, 2 fights at the UFC, both against good competition. A win against Brad Katona, and who's the other one? Oh, Dan Argueta submitted him. The thing that I'm really having a hard time with here is Rob Font has good hands, really solid hands. He could piece up a lot of people in the UFC. And the ticket to beating Rob Font is taking him to the ground. And we've seen some guys do that to him before. We saw Corey Sandhagen do it to him. We saw Chito Vera do it to him. They have they struggle with him on his feet a little bit, so they take him to the ground. He's got a really good kicking game. He's got fast hands, a stout jab. Then you have Matsumoto, who his main form of victory leading up to this point is submission. And so, what he's going to try and do. He's going to try and take Rob Font to the ground. But when guys start trying to wrap up Rob Font, he has a way of slipping out. He's very, very loose when it comes to his submission defense. And he's almost like worm-like the way that he could squirm out of things. It's just once he's on his back, he's already on his back. And if you get him in side control, he has a tough time getting out of there. He doesn't really have strong hips like that. And Gene Matsumoto is 16-0. Couldn't submit Brad Katona. Brad Katona is another guy. He's not as wiry as Rob Font. He's a little shorter and a little bit more like muscle bound. I'm going to go with Gene Matsumoto to get this one done, I think, because, he's going to be looking to take Rob Font down. And then even if he does, he's also 25 as opposed to Rob Font's 37 years old. But he's a smaller guy. It's going to be harder for Rob Font to get his legs under there and really posture up, push off the hips and everything to get up off the ground. So I think even though Matsumoto probably isn't going to submit him, it's probably going to be a relatively uneventful fight where out of the 15 minutes, 12 and a half are spent with Matsumoto on top, just, and Rob Font wriggling around trying to get out. So, give me Gene Matsumoto to beat Rob Font. What do you think?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and we've seen Rob Font. You look back at a couple of these fights here. Davison Figueiredo, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Vera, all guys that have a decent amount of grappling, a decent amount of striking. But, we've seen Rob Font held down before. It's not like he's got impenetrable takedown defense. And for that reason, I think you're going to see Gian Matsumoto at some point land one of those takedowns at 25 years old and be able to hold down Rob Font. We were just talking about the Fighting Nerds and a gym that, is like basically a stamp of approval. When I see New England Cartel, I think of another gym that, at one point might have been that, and they definitely had their shine. But at this point, we've seen a lot of those New England Cartel guys kind of be on a little bit of a slide. And I don't know that ends here. Gene Matsumoto to get this one done, probably by decision of some sort.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Next up, co-main event, Brendan Allen versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Both these guys are really accomplished grapplers, and they both got a really strong submission game. So with that being said, it's going to take place on the feet most likely. You know, I don't think either guy is going to want to engage and go for the takedown. Brendan Allen may be a little bit more inclined. He does have a slight grappling advantage, and he may be even more inclined after Anthony Hernandez touches him up a couple times, because Anthony Hernandez does have really good hands as well. He's knocked out a couple guys in his most recent couple fights. One of them being Edmund Shabazian, who is pretty solid. Submitted Roman Kopylov, TKO'd Michelle Pajeda, ground and pound. So, like, the guy can win anywhere. Submission win over Marc-Andre Barriault, who I've been pretty unimpressed with his last couple of fights. But I don't know. With all that being said, I think Brendan Allen's a guy that can get caught. And if he doesn't land the takedown and he doesn't submit Anthony Hernandez, well, every round starts back on the feet. And I think Anthony Hernandez is it's going to be a labor to take him to the ground to begin with. And it's going to be especially difficult to try and submit Anthony Hernandez. Meanwhile, I don't think it's going to be as difficult for Anthony Hernandez to put the pause on Brendan Allen and, you know, maybe knock him out, or at least stun him enough in each round to win this one on the cards. Maybe you see one round go to Brendan Allen. His hands have gotten better, but they're just not good enough, you know. Yeah, they're really just not good enough, unfortunately. If he should have gotten a finish over Chris Curtis, and he couldn't finish Chris Curtis. So that tells me a lot about Brendan Allen. So give me Anthony Hernandez this week. I like him to beat Brendan Allen, probably by knockout, but maybe even by decision. So either one. What do you think?
And if you're going to take Anthony Hernandez, I guess you should take it at DraftKings. Looking at fight odds, minus 198. It's as wide as minus 400 on Bet Online. Maybe they're a little bit skewed one way, but you see minus 330, my bookie, minus 299, Bet One. Jazz Bet 190, Bet 105 is minus 267, Bovada minus 275. So listen, if you're you know, willing to take Brendan Allen, and you want the best upside, this is what it opened and this is what it's at. What it's current at. Say, all right, well, hey, yeah, we're all about the same. That makes a lot of sense. Shows I'm not reading the screen right. Anyway, listen, a lot of people are on Hernandez to get this one done, and so am I. I think, you know, it's, you know, when you look at these two guys who, if they do come down to stand up and striking, I think Fluffy Hernandez is a little bit faster, a lot more crisp, and he's just more precise. Whereas Brendan Allen is clearly a grappler who is learning to strike and uses his grapple to build onto his striking. Hernandez is truly a master at striking. And he's also, you know, very adept at the ground. So I expect Anthony Hernandez to get this one done. I potentially even to finish Brendan Allen. What are the odds for that? Not very many people are expecting Hernandez to get this one via finish. But listen, the knockout over Michelle Pajeda will be a ground and pound, submission of Roman Kopylov, knockout of Edmund Shabazian, submission of Marc-Andre Barriault. His last decision was Josh Fremd almost 3 years ago. We've seen, you know, this guy really come into his own. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, Brendan Allen is super tough in his own right. He withstood Nasruddin Imavov, but and he really kind of got pounded in that one. But still, and he got pounded by Chris Curtis as well. But listen, depending on what the odds are, I might take Anthony Hernandez by knockout over one of these 3 rounds. It is 3 rounds. It's a possibility, but it's not a probability. So that's all I'll say about that. But definitely an interesting fight, but when I have to go with Anthony Hernandez, minus 285 doesn't even feel that bad. So if you can find it for different, you know, anything minus 265, that's not bad from Bet US. So that's where I'd go if you could find it for different. But either way, that's where I'm at.
That's solid. Also, if you are betting, this is our legal disclaimer. Bet responsibly. We're not experts, and we're not guaranteeing any money over here. Okay, so don't try and sue us, all right, or come after us personally if you lose a bet on Anthony Hernandez this weekend, or anybody that we've talked about ever. All right, finally, main event time. Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong, and I'm very surprised to see these odds, at least the opening odds, be so for Song Yadong. He opened at minus 270 as opposed to Henry Cejudo's plus 220. Considering Henry Cejudo comes back to the UFC and loses to Aljamain Sterling and then to Merab Dvalishvili. Aljamain was the champ at the time. and Merab goes on to become the champ. He looked horrible against Merab. He looked a lot better against. Oh, actually, we saw that one against Aljamain. We were there in person in New Jersey. Yeah, Henry Cejudo didn't look great against Merab, and the one against Aljamain was way more of a toss-up when it came down to the judges' scorecards. He is 38 as opposed to Song Yadong, 27. He's a young bull for the UFC, especially, for this division where a lot of the top guys are starting to hit their 30s and higher. Song Yadong isn't going to go out there and take down Henry Cejudo, obviously, not in the way that Merab did, like 50 times and carried him across the octagon. But his takedown defense is pretty good. And Henry Cejudo going for takedowns, he's starting to look slower and slower, right? That Aljo fight was a year and 9 months ago. It feels like a lot longer ago. And then just under a year ago, he fought Merab. And in between those two fights, I think Henry definitely regressed a lot. I don't think he's a guy. It's like when a band says that they're breaking up and then they go on like another tour 5 years later. Everything is good until you run out of money. And I think that's kind of where Henry Cejudo is at this point. Like, I don't see him becoming the champ. Fighting Song Yadong and beating him definitely gives you a step up in the rankings and, maybe puts you back in that conversation. But I don't think Henry Cejudo is ever going to be champ again. I think he knows it. And Song Yadong is a guy with a bright future ahead of him. So that plays into the mental aspect of these guys a little bit. Henry Cejudo is an Olympic champ, and he's fought 4 belts, and he's won multiple belts. But when you go from that to just being in the sport, like we've seen guys like Kamaru Usman who fighting non-title fights after reigning and being the champ for so long and reaching that status in your career and your legacy. When you don't have that to fight for, those guys, they look like a step slower and they look a little bit more willing to go out. When they get hit with something adverse, there's not like that heart and that grittiness anymore telling them like, yo, get back on your horse and throw something back. We've seen that with a lot of guys in the past. And I think that that's how it's going to go down, right? I think that Song Yadong is going to defend a lot of takedowns from Henry Cejudo early on into the fight. Cejudo may not get tired. He does have that Olympic cardio. So he does, and I almost said his cardio didn't look great against Merab, except that nobody's cardio holds up against that guy. But yeah, I think Song Yadong is going to be able to defend a bunch of takedowns. Henry Cejudo loves that single leg takedown. Song Yadong is really good at grounding himself with the other leg, staying on his feet, and then his hands are just like you've heard everybody in this division say it. Pretty much every bantamweight that's fought Song Yadong has said in the past that he's the hardest hitter. Like Corey Sandhagen was like, yeah, that's the hardest I've been hit. A lot of guys have mentioned that. And not only does he hit hard, but he's also super crisp. His combinations are nasty. Body, head, leg kick, body, head, like just all over the place. Classic boxing with the leg kick mixed in. So give me Song Yadong to really mix it up on Henry Cejudo, deny a lot of what he's trying to do, and eventually, more than likely, over a 5-round fight, put Henry Cejudo's lights out. Because that's just it. It's not really as much to do with Henry Cejudo as it is to do with Song Yadong. So give me Song Yadong to beat Henry Cejudo in the main event. What do you think?
Yeah. Again, telling you again, I think Song Yadong is going to get this one done. Maybe if it was 2 or 3 years ago, Henry Cejudo hasn't taken some time off, maybe I would have leaned his way. But now that Song Yadong is 27 years old, he's got a bunch of fights in the UFC. 42% of the bets still have Song by decision, and then 33% win by TKO. So, I mean, not too much separating those two options there, but you talk about Song Yadong's hard-hitting ability. You talk about his solid takedown defense. You talk about Henry Cejudo's lackluster ability to get takedowns in his last couple of fights. Ultimately, I think these are two guys who are at the opposite points of their career. You have Song Yadong, who's just entering his prime, and you have Henry Cejudo, who's probably exited his prime and is now entering, a potentially stark decline. Especially, we're talking about 135-pounders, been off for 2 years. Yes, he's been in the gym, but he's been off for 2 years, hasn't been in fight camps. And, you look at him, he's 38 years old. The older you get at these lighter weight classes, the more of a fall off there is, because these lighter guys are fast, and Song Yadong's fast, and he hits hard, and he's got good takedown defense. So everything's pointing in the air of Song Yadong. It's a 5-round fight. Potentially, you could see Henry Cejudo get knocked out. He hasn't fought in over a year. He potentially wasn't coming back. It's you're not really sure. I don't expect this to be, his best performance Merab Dvalishvili kind of wiped the floor with him a little bit. He was able to grapple him all over the place. And I think now we're going to see Song Yadong piece him up. And I think Song Yadong is going to defend most of the takedowns. And we're going to see a win by Song Yadong. The only question for me is knockout or decision. And to that, I'm going to say decision. I'll give Henry Cejudo the benefit of the doubt here. Triple C, championship of 2 weight classes, Olympic gold medalist. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that he's going to withstand the barrage and wrestle good just enough at 38 years old to leave with a decision. I don't expect him to get the win, though.
See, I think if it goes 5 rounds, it is more likely that Henry Cejudo he obviously has a better chance of winning the fight than if he were to get knocked out. I think that Song is probably going to find that shot in like the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that puts his lights out, but agree to disagree on that one then.
It's just a gut feeling. He's a champion and maybe not, but you never know. You never know. I mean, he maybe won't have a say in the matter.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes when you get knocked out. That's a good way to put it. All right, you want to put a bow on this thing? Do our rundown? All right, starting at the bottom, I have Modestas Bukauskas over Rafael Sequeira, Mansour Abdul Malik over Nick Klein, Ricky Samon over Javid Bashrat, Nursultan Druziboev over Eric Mechanico, Ibo Aslan over Jan Kutalaba. And then for the main card, I'm going with Alonzo Menafield over Julius Walker, Gene Silver over Bagdasarian, Gene Masumoto over Rob Font, Anthony Hernandez over Brendan Allen, and Yadong Song over Henry Cejudo. I like saying Song Yadong better. It flows, but all respect. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, I got everything you just said. So.
Okay, that makes it easy. That'll make it easy on us when it comes to figuring out our records next week. We'll be both exactly the same depending on how this plays out. Hopefully there's a big fat O in the L column for us, and not for some of these guys on here like Julius Walker. Hopefully he takes a 1 in his L column after this week. But other than that, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps us out immensely. Check us out on Spotify, X, and Instagram @_pickinwinners. And what else? Am I missing anything, Tom?
No, just let us know what you think of our picks. Let us know what your favorite picks are, what fights you're looking most forward to. And, while you're there, go ahead, give us a like, give us a hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate it.
Take care. Brush your hair.